Howdy, y'all. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Sorry I'm late today. My boys are at Grammy's house today. And so it was just me and the baby. And that's why I always say I actually have it easier with 6 than those who have 1. Because a lot more can get done when you have some extras around, some extra arms around. Not as much can get done when you just have you. So it's me and the baby today. I don't know if you can see her. She's actually off to the side in her high chair eating her corn dog. So that is her. She also has a runny nose. So good afternoon to everybody. Good evening to some. It was an exciting day today. We had opening arguments in the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health, basically the Supreme Court versus Mississippi. This is a big deal because it's really challenging the ruling of Roe versus Wade and Casey, which I didn't realize until listening to the opening arguments today. So that goes all the way back to 1973. Before we get started, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in here. If you are on the Black Conservative Preacher YouTube, I'm going to need you to switch over to FranklyJamee. You can find me on YouTube at FranklyJamee. Does anybody have the link they want to post in that the Black Conservative Preacher chat, please? Because I'm going to have to stop that. I just wanted to let you guys know that we are going live, and you can find me on FranklyJamee on YouTube. I can't run them both on YouTube at the same time. So this show is brought to you by onamericanstreets.com. That's onamericanstreets.com. Thank you so much for joining me. Please hit that subscribe, like button, follow, share. I think we are being shadow banned again, and so your sharing is so appreciated because it gets it out there. Leave comments, hit those heart buttons. I don't know, that's the only emoji I use, really. Hearts and wows. They need to bring in a puke emoji because I'd use that often as well. But thank you so much for tuning in today, guys. So I need everybody on the Black Conservative Preacher to switch over to FranklyJamee. It looks like Country Girl has posted the link to the FranklyJamee page, and hope to see you guys over there as I'm going to go ahead and shut this down in a few minutes. Okay, so what we saw today is the first day of oral arguments with the Supreme Court, and I found it to be very interesting. I didn't realize there was going to be an audio feed to that, but I will be connecting to that audio feed on Monday morning. Court was adjourned until Monday morning. It looks like the Supreme Court only hears oral arguments on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, and so we will see them back, it looks like, on Monday morning. But as for today, I did listen to him, and I thought that it was very interesting procession that went on there. I don't know if procession is actually the right word, but it was a very interesting interaction that took place in the Supreme Court. I was really excited to be able to listen to it. And while I was listening to it, I was thinking, I did not think that I would be doing this 4 decades into my life. I did not know that I would be interested in listening to Supreme Court arguments. Listening to the Supreme Court judges was very exciting. There are they're all smart people, not just the justices, but the generals that were there arguing their cases. They've done their due diligence. They do their research. They know why they have a stance, and so it was really interesting and really exciting to be able to listen to them argue their points and make their questions. Okay, Black Conservative Preacher people, on YouTube, I'm going to go ahead and shut that down. Still 25 people watching. If you want to come find us at FranklyJamee, I think the link has been posted several times in the chat. All right, thank you so much, guys. Hope to see you on the other page. Okay, so let's jump right in. Okay, so I'm going to pull up. They're going to be sound bites, so I'm not going to be moving back and forth to video because this is only audio, okay? It's just an audio feed in the courtroom as they argue their points between the justices, the 9 Supreme Court justices, and the generals and their teams. Okay, so there will be no audio or no video. It's just audio. So there are several points during this hour and 50-minute interaction that I wanted to bring up, and something really it hit hard. It's something that I already knew, but this main point really, it solidified what the left, what these women are really arguing and what they're really mad about. And I can't wait to get into that because it is clear as day. I mean, listening to this was so clear as day what they are arguing, who they're mad at, and how this will never be resolved here on earth. Okay, so we're going to get right into it. So first of all, it takes right off, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. We're going to hear the general make an argument here. Let's see, 4 minutes and 20 seconds. Let's get there.
Those conclusions were, with respect, Justice Breyer, mistaken. And the last 30 years has not seen any calming of that. It's been very different than some of the court's other controversial decisions that have seen much more calm.
What hasn't been...
Okay, so this is Justice Sotomayor, who has been on the seat since 2009, I want to say. I had this all pulled up. I'm going to pull this up again just to... because I want to let you guys know who we're listening to, who we're hearing. So I'm trying to paint a picture for you. Since there is no video, I have it on my phone, but I'm going to pull it up on the computer. If you're going to throw it on the ground, you can't have it. She's throwing her corn dog everywhere. Okay, Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor has been in the seat since 2009, I believe. Is this? Yeah, she assumed the role August 8th of 2009. Okay, so we're listening to her make the argument that, and this really shows. I mean, it, right out of the door, it shows us who they're really mad at, and okay, let's hear it.
At issue in the last 30 years is the line that Casey drew of viability. There has been some difference of opinion with respect to undue burden, but the right of a woman to choose, the right to control her own body, has been clearly set for since Casey and never challenged. You want us to reject that line of viability and adopt something different. 15 justices over 50 years have, or I should say 30 since Casey, have reaffirmed that basic viability line. 4 have said no, 2 of them members of this court, but 15 justices have said yes, of varying political backgrounds. Now, the sponsors of this bill, the House bill in Mississippi, said we're doing it because we have new justices. the newest ban that Mississippi has put in place, the 6-week ban, the Senate sponsor said, we're doing it because we have new justices on the Supreme Court. Will this institution survive the stench that this creates in the public perception that the Constitution and its reading are just political acts?
Okay, so right out of the gate, she goes in, she makes a statement that a woman has a right to control her body, okay? And I'm not arguing against that point. A woman has a right to control her body, what goes into it and the things that happen to it and such and such. Here's the problem, though. A woman only has a right to control her body to the point of God's design, okay? A woman has the right to control her body to the point of God's design. You can't go past that. And although there have been actually a lot of medical technologies and such that have been created that have given us even more control over things that we didn't have before. But we have to remember that God allows these things. So what I mean by the fact that a woman has a right to control her body to the point of God's design is this. Pregnancy, we all know as adults how pregnancy happens. Just a quick overview. We've got we've got ovaries that produce eggs. We've got sperm, the testicles, the epididymis that produces sperm. They meet in the middle and they create a new being, right? That conception creates a new being. Okay, so you need an egg and you need a sperm. You can't do without both of them, right? This is a very specific process that happens very randomly, okay? So the specific process is the egg and the sperm uniting to conceive. That's the process. It happens randomly because you don't always know when the egg is going to be released. Millions of sperm are released per dose, per shot. And you don't know if any of those sperm are going to meet with the egg at any given time. There's only certain windows of opportunity, right? So this is why we have women out there who are tracking their temperatures and they're tracking their ovulation and even when you track your ovulation, it's not guaranteed. You don't know for sure that's when your egg is going to be released. And then your egg is only in there for a certain amount of time. And then is it a good egg or is it a bad egg? Is it a egg that the sperm only lives for a certain period of time. So let's say your egg is released, but then it's been there for a while, and then the sperm comes in trying to find the egg, and the egg now is dead or is gone. The sperm can't even reach it anymore. Or let's say the egg is there, it's ready, but the sperm in the shot, because sperm die and have to be reproduced. So if there's not a shot going out, it may be all blanks, and then the next one comes and they're all live, but by that time the egg is gone. So you see what I mean this could be explained in so many different ways, but it's a very specific process that happens very randomly, okay? So you only have control to a certain point. And so we will hear throughout this trial, throughout these oral arguments, that women are really mad at God. They're mad at the design. This is a godly problem, a godly design issue that they're trying to rectify with worldly, man-made legal laws. It just can't work like that. You can't put God's design into a box like that. a man-made law cannot contain godly design. It can't work like that. So we're going to see them talk about viability and safe haven laws and other things. And again, it's all going to come back to the fact that they've got worldly decisions based on worldly process versus worldly decisions in the face of godly design. And women are really mad at the creator. Okay, we're going to jump in. There was a lot of stuff that happened in the middle that was kind of boring. We're going to jump to 47 minutes here where they start talking about safe haven laws. Now, if you know what safe haven laws, it's basically the law that was enacted where if a person does not want, if they want to relinquish the rights to a baby, they can drop them off at a hospital with no penalties. Alive.
Broad social reasons, health reasons, socioeconomic reasons, so their regimes really aren't comparable, and they also have here. So if the court were to move the line, so it may need to reconsider the rules around regulations, because if it's cutting the time period to obtain an abortion roughly in half, then those barriers are going to be much more important.
Thank you.
Ms. Rickelman, I have a question about the safe haven laws. So petitioner points out that in all 50 states, you can terminate parental rights by relinquishing a child after abortion, and I think the shortest period might have been 48 hours, if I'm remembering the data correctly. So it seems to me, seen in that light, both Roe and Casey emphasize the burdens of parenting. And insofar as you and many of your amici focus on the ways in which the forced parenting, forced motherhood would hinder women's access to the workplace and to equal opportunities. It's also focused on the consequences of parenting and the obligations of motherhood that flow from pregnancy. Why don't the safe haven laws take care of that problem? It seems to me that it focuses the burden much more narrowly. There is, without question, an infringement on bodily autonomy, which we have in other contexts like vaccines. However, it doesn't seem to me to follow that pregnancy and then parenthood are all part of the same burden. And so it seems to me that the choice more focused would be between, say, the ability to get an abortion at 23 weeks or the state requiring the woman to go 15, 16 weeks more and then terminate parental rights at the conclusion. Why didn't you address the safe haven laws, and why don't they matter?
I think they don't matter for a couple of reasons, Your Honor. First, even if some of those laws are new since Casey, the idea that a woman could place a child up for adoption has, of course, been true since Roe. So it's a consideration that the court already had before it when it decided those cases and adhered to the viability line. But in addition, we don't just focus on the burdens of parenting, and neither did Roe and Casey. Instead, pregnancy itself is unique. It imposes unique physical demands and risk on women, and in fact has impact on all of their lives, on their ability to care for other children, other family members, on their ability to work. And in particular, in Mississippi, those risks are alarmingly high. It's 75 times more dangerous to give birth in Mississippi than it is to have a pre-viability abortion, and those risks are disproportionately threatening the lives of women of color.
So are you saying, I mean, actually, as I read Roe and Casey, they don't talk very much about adoption. It's a passing reference that means out of the obligations of parenthood. But as I hear this answer, then are you saying that the right, as you conceive of it, is grounded primarily in the bearing of the child, and the carrying of pregnancy, and not so much looking forward into the consequences on professional opportunities and work life and economic burdens?
No, Your Honor, I believe it's both, and that is exactly how Casey talked about it.
Okay, so what we're hearing here is Justice Amy Coney Barrett has brought up a question. What is the problem with safe haven laws in place where women can drop off a baby that they want to relinquish rights to without punishment? Is the problem, because a lot of the argument has been, and I find this really ironic coming from Amy Coney Barrett, who not only is a mother to her biological children, but also adopted children, and she's sitting on the Supreme Court justice. So I'm not really sure I'm not really sure what the argument is as far as like I can't pursue my career if I'm a mother. But with that aside, I know not everybody has probably the same their life doesn't look like hers. But I find it really interesting that that was the argument she was making. But she's saying, so in light of that, does it go beyond the fact that it's not just the future of parenting the child, but you're saying that it is the problem of carrying and birthing the child. And then the general goes in to say that it is 75% more dangerous to give birth in Mississippi. So it begs the question, if it's 75% more dangerous, I can't remember if that's exactly the percentage she said, to give birth in Mississippi, is the answer to just terminate the pregnancy altogether instead of making birth, labor, and delivery safer? Like, we don't want to spend the time to make labor and delivery more safe. We just want to terminate the pregnancy altogether. I mean, this is the logic by which they are arguing their point. What I see here, and we will see this throughout this entire oral argument, what we see here is that they will continue to make the argument to terminate the pregnancy in light of circumstantial issues or concern, right? Temporary circumstantial issues or concern. And it gives us, what it's doing is opening the door for education opportunities. Like, I'm a big proponent for education, right? So what we're seeing here is large opportunities for education. And this is not just in schools. Why are people dying from giving labor and giving birth to children in hospitals in Mississippi? What is the problem? What is going on there? Are the policies and procedures off? Because I know that there's a lot of stuff that happens during labor and delivery that shouldn't happen. And one of the main reasons why a lot of people are choosing to just go ahead and have their children at home again, because it's almost safer to do it at home where you don't have a massive amount of interventions. Intervention has become a huge issue. So that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But why are we not focusing on the fact that it's 75% more dangerous to give birth, a natural function of a woman? Okay, giving birth is not an emergency. Let me just put that out there, folks. Giving birth is not an emergency situation. It is a continuance of the pregnancy experience. It's the final countdown. It's the final take. It's the crescendo, shall I say. It's the crescendo, okay? The final take would be the elation of having your newborn baby laying in your arms, right? But it's not an emergency situation. And people have turned it into, oh my gosh, an emergency situation when it's not. So why are we not focusing our attention on why on earth is it 75% more dangerous to give birth in Mississippi? What is going on in Mississippi? Okay? We're going to hear more about the viability line. So what the viability line is, right now it's set at 24 weeks, which means they have made the determination that a child is not viable, cannot live outside, separate from the mom, outside the womb, on its own until 24 weeks. So that's the viability line. So that's where people have, or many states, the federal law has made it so that federally abortions aren't legal after the viability line. after the line that they've determined that a child can survive separate from the mother outside of the womb. However, we'll see later, even one of the justices brings this up, but viability largely depends on medical intervention as well. So these days, our technology and our medical area, especially in the States, has changed. Back in 1973, keeping a baby alive at 24 weeks was much different than today keeping a baby alive at 24 weeks. In fact, I think we've even kept babies alive at 22 and 20 weeks, if I remember correctly. I want to say even less than that, but the thing about it is our medical professionals have created ways to keep babies alive earlier and earlier in gestational periods, right? So the viability line is that's what they're arguing a lot, but it's very subjective to a certain degree. So we're going to hear some more about that.
That the viability line is the central holding of both Casey and Roe.
Well, you do emphasize that the court drew the line at viability in Roe and reaffirmed that in Casey, and that is certainly something that we have to take very seriously into consideration. But suppose we were considering that question now for the first time. I'm sure you know the arguments about the viability line as well as I do, probably better than I do. What would you say in defense of that line? What would you say to the argument that has been made many times by people who are pro-choice and pro-life that the line really doesn't make any sense, that it is, as Justice Blackmun himself described it, arbitrary? If a woman wants to be free of the burdens of pregnancy, that interest does not disappear the moment the viability line is crossed. Isn't that right?
So what he's asking is, if a woman wants to be free of the pregnancy, that doesn't just begin or end at the viability line. She still has that same interest before the viability line comes into play, right? So let's say that the viability line is 24 weeks. Let's say that the woman finds out she's pregnant at 6 weeks, and she knows she doesn't want to carry this baby. Her interest was that at 6 weeks. And if it's still that at 24 weeks or at 15 weeks, that hasn't changed, right? That's what he's proposing.
No, Your Honor. And if I may make a few points to answer your question. First, I think the state views viability as arbitrary because it completely discounts the woman's interest. But viability...
No, but does a woman upon reaching the point of viability, does not the woman have the same interest that she had before viability in being free of this pregnancy that she no longer wants to continue?
Viability...
I will disagree with him on that. He's trying to make this argument that her interest was the same then as it is now. However, it can change, right? So our minds change on a daily basis with certain things. So this is no different. So you could want the baby at 6 weeks and no longer want the baby at 15. You could want the baby at 15 weeks and no longer want the baby at 24 weeks. The problem here is that the reason your mind has changed is majorly. Why can't I even say this word? My tongue is like all tied. Is largely due to circumstantial issues. So at 6 weeks, you may be in a good relationship, you may have a great job, you may be confident in your abilities moving forward with this child and your growing family. At 24 weeks, your life could literally be upside down. Your significant other could have died. You could have gotten to a huge argument that ended everything. You could have lost your job. Anything could have happened between 6 and 24 weeks, right? So, but again, I come back to the fact that those are circumstantial issues, which are temporary. And so what we're seeing here is the argument to have the right to enact a permanent solution to temporary problems. Because we can overcome anything. Just like we can change, our lives can change from 6 to 24 weeks. They can change from 24 to past birth, right? Everything can change. These are all circumstantial issues.
Is a principled line, Your Honor, because in ordering the
I'm trying to see whether it is a principled line.
Yes,
you agree with me at least on that point, that a woman still has the same interest in terminating her pregnancy after the viability line has been crossed.
Yes, Your Honor, but the court balanced the interest, and in ordering the interest
look at
at
the
stake.
interest on the other side. The fetus has an interest in having a life.
I love that he said that. The fetus, which is the baby, has an interest in having a life. So, and that's been a big argument between pro-choice and pro-life, right? Is pro-choice, they don't see the child as a child. They don't see the child as a life. They don't see the child as having rights. They don't see the child as having any interest whatsoever. This is purely a woman's standpoint. It's only the woman's issues, right? We're only concerned with what the woman wants, what the woman thinks, and no matter who or what needs to be sacrificed, that woman needs to be able to have control and get whatever she wants. And that, I have a really big problem with that. That is a very serious pride issue. And like I said last night on the show, this goes way back to the beginning in the fall. Eve wanted what she wanted, okay? The way that the serpent approached Eve, in that he said to her, he deceived her, he said, "You won't surely die," right? Putting in her a seed of doubt that God didn't really want her best. There was more out there that he was holding back from her, and he wasn't giving her the thing, and she wanted to be able to control that. She wanted whatever she didn't have. She wanted it, right? And we see this then, we see this now, and this is even more detrimental because there's actually death happening. So then it wasn't "you will surely die." Well, no, you're not going to drop dead and die, but your soul is going to die. You're going to be separated from the Lord, and that is death, right? Now we're actually seeing physical death. When this woman wants to go out and do what she wants to do, she wants what she wants, and she wants it when she wants it. She doesn't want to be told anything about it. We're losing a life. So this justice, I missed his name, is bringing up the fact that we have a woman's interest. I get it. I've carried and birthed, and actually I did have one miscarriage way back, and I actually did have an abortion as well. So I have actually been pregnant 8 times. I've carried and birthed 6 children. I've had all kinds of circumstantial situations in between all of those different things. And as I said before, all of my excuses would fall into either one of 2 categories, fear or pride. And I had some pride in there, and I had some fear in there. And both of those are ungodly traits to have, because love casts out all fear. So neither one of them are godly traits. And what we're seeing here is a bunch of ungodly women who are really mad at how God designed them to be, and they want to control the situation. So here he's bringing up the fact that a child has an interest too. The child has an interest to live.
And that doesn't change, does it, from
the
point before viability to the point after viability?
In some people's view, it doesn't, Your Honor, but what the court said is that those philosophical differences couldn't be resolved in a way.
That's what I'm getting at. What is the philosophical argument, the secular philosophical argument for saying this is the appropriate line? There are those who say that the rights of personhood should be considered to have taken hold at a point when the fetus acquires certain independent characteristics. But viability is dependent on medical technology and medical practice. It has changed. It may continue to change.
Yes, so that's what I said earlier. This Supreme Justice said viability largely depends on our medical technologies and our developments. A baby that we could not save in the 1600s. We couldn't even barely save a baby at 37 weeks, right? The way our hygiene, the cleanliness, the medical technologies we had then, if a baby was born at 34 weeks, we didn't have, ventilators to put them on. We didn't have the medical technologies that we have today. So then was viability at 30 some weeks, and now viability is at 24 weeks. And viability could someday be, who knows what it could be? Who knows what we may end up getting to? At an hour and 10 minutes, Justice Kavanaugh argues a return to neutrality. Girl, what? I said stop doing that. He argues that maybe we should leave this to the people. Maybe we should leave this to the state. So maybe we overstepped in Roe versus Wade and Casey, right? Maybe we did too much and we should step back and return to a place of complete neutrality, right? But the problem is most people, well, I'm not going to say most people, but the problem is there is a really close call between pro-choice and pro-life right now. And pro-choice does not want to leave it to the people because you end up with heartbeat bills like in Ohio. You end up with a bill like in Texas. You end up with the bill in Mississippi where you cannot have abortions after 6 weeks. These heartbeat bills, this is the people. This is the states, right? And she doesn't want to leave that up to the state. Most people don't want to leave that up to the state because the people will likely vote to save the babies. Now, we do have people who, like Colorado, they voted to save the wolves and kill the babies. Kid you not. In the last election, there were 2 bills on the ballot, and these people literally voted to save the wolves. They wanted all kinds of stuff put out there to save the wolves, and they voted to kill the babies. It's just like so bizarre. So you will have states like that, but you're going to find that the Democratic states are the ones that don't mind killing the babies and saving the wolves, and the Republican states, the more conservative states, are going to be the ones who want to save the babies with heartbeat bills. So you're going to have a very divided, if this is to overturn Roe and Casey, you're going to have, again, a very divided country on this case. And this has always divided people. Pro-choice and pro-life are 2 very polarizing points of view, right? And you don't typically have people switching sides. Every once in a while, you'll have someone who goes from it's okay to do it to, whoa, I really woke up and I don't think that's a good idea anymore. You don't have a lot of people going, it's not okay to take a baby's life, and then all of a sudden they wake up and go, yeah, I think it's okay to murder them. That's good. No big deal. You don't really have a whole lot of those transformations. You have more doctors and people like me, women who have done it and have nothing but regret. They hate that they made that decision. It's not something they would ever do again. You typically have those. The people who have abortions, like the woman who's had like 21, she's super proud about it. Oprah, shout your abortion or something like that. I can't remember what the whole thing was, but it was like, be really proud about this decision that you made and stuff. Those people will never come back to the other side, you know, like this is probably what they want to do. They're proud about it. And the thing about it is pride goes before the fall. And it's a very dangerous place to be. You do not want to be walking in pride. Colorado also wants pedophiles not called that. Yeah, Colorado, I wouldn't move there. Okay, so Justice Kavanaugh is arguing a return to complete neutrality and states, so we'll hear that. 110 and 45.
Agreements can't be resolved in a way that a woman has no choice in the matter. And second, I don't think it would be a neutral position. The Constitution provides a guarantee of liberty. The court has interpreted that liberty to include the ability to make decisions related to childbearing, marriage, and family. Women have an equal right to liberty under the Constitution, Your Honor. And if they're not able to make this decision, if states can take control of women's bodies and force them to endure months of pregnancy and childbirth, then they will never have equal status under the Constitution.
Okay, did you guys just hear what she said? I feel like we need to listen to it again. This is just so bizarre to me. Sorry. Runny nose. She's got a cold. This is so bizarre to me that she would say such a thing. If women, if they continue to force women to endure pregnancy. What did she say? What did she say? I'm just like so baffled by these arguments. I'm so baffled by these arguments. It's really tough. What are we at? We're at 111.07. And it's also really hard for it just to be video or just to be audio. Okay, here we go.
Interpreted that liberty to include the ability to make decisions related to childbearing, marriage, and family. Women have an equal right to liberty under the Constitution, Your Honor. And if they're not able to make this decision, if states can take control of women's bodies and force them to endure months of pregnancy and childbirth, then they will never have equal status under the Constitution.
Okay, she's saying if women are forced to endure months of pregnancy, they will never have equal status under the Constitution. And this comes up multiple times. She says this multiple times. She's saying that women don't have the right to fully and equally participate in society if they cannot choose to take the life of their baby as they choose, as they want. At free will. I'm sure that they would appreciate no viability whatsoever because they get really mad when heartbeat bills come out, right? Because the scientists said that there's a heartbeat at 22 days or something like that. A heartbeat bill. They get really mad with that. And so it's really having the right to make these decisions. And again, they want full control over their bodies, but they're never going to gain full control over God's designed process. It's not ever going to happen. This is why people who are engaged and they have men have vasectomies or women have their tubes tied. There's no contraception out there that is fully 100% effective except removing the uterus. Because no one without a uterus, I want to say that louder for the people in the back. No one without a uterus, meaning no woman without a uterus, because men do not have uteruses. I don't think that's how you say uterus. I don't think that's how you say the plural of uterus. I think I'm really butchering words today. No woman without a uterus can conceive or carry a child. It can't happen. You have to have a uterus. What are you doing? This girl. Do you guys see her doing these gymnastic things in the back here? So, do you want this or no? Don't throw Eat it. Take a bite. I can't have her too close to me. She just wants to crawl on me. Okay. So, she's saying that if women are forced to endure pregnancies, right, then they will not have equal status under the Constitution. They will not have the same liberty that everybody else has. But this is not a legal matter. This is a God's design matter.
And I want to ask a question about stare decisis and to think about how to approach that here, because there have been lots of questions picking up on Justice Barrett's questions and others. And history helps think about stare decisis as I've looked at it, and the history of how the courts applied stare decisis. And when you really dig into it, history tells a somewhat different story, I think, than is sometimes assumed. Think about some of the most important cases, the most consequential cases in this court's history. There's a string of them where the case.
Okay, so I don't know all of the legal terminology, but stare decisis, if some of you lawyer people chime in, I believe just based on listening to what they're saying, the context of it, I believe because the woman is the general who is opposing, she's for Jackson Health. The general man, the male's voice that you would hear, he's the one arguing for the ban, like he's for the state of Mississippi. So if I understand correctly, she's arguing since the precedent has been set with Roe and Casey, that they should not overturn it because it is a precedent. Now, Kavanaugh is actually, Kavanaugh, what was I saying? This is why I can't look into the comments when I have a thought. He's actually saying that there have been a string of several precedent cases that have been overturned.
Cases overruled precedent. Brown v. Board outlawed separate but equal. Baker versus Carr, which set the stage for one person, one vote. West Coast Hotel, which recognized the state's authority to regulate business. Miranda versus Arizona, which required police to give warnings when about the right to remain silent and to have an attorney present to suspects in criminal custody. Lawrence v. Texas, which said that the state may not prohibit same-sex conduct. Knapp versus Ohio, which held that the exclusionary rule applies to state criminal prosecutions to exclude evidence obtained in violation of the Fourth Amendment. Gideon versus Wainwright, which guaranteed the right to counsel in criminal cases. Obergefell, which recognized a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. In each of those cases, and that's a list, and I could go on, and those are some of the most consequential and important in the court's history, the court overruled precedent. And it turns out if the court in those cases had listened and they were presented with arguments in those cases, adhere to precedent. In Brown v. Board, adhere to Plessy. In West Coast Hotel, adhere to Atkins and adhere to Lochner. And if the court had done that in those cases, the country would be a much different place. So
I like that he's made that statement because he did just list off a bunch of cases that overruled the precedent. And that is important to understand because even back in the times of slavery, the South was very comfortable in their ways of life. They had tons of free labor. They were debt-free. And that was the argument they made often is this is our way of life. This is our precedent, right? We don't want to overturn our precedent. It took them 200 years to do it, but you know what? It's okay to overturn precedent, especially with progression. And like we mentioned earlier, just the progression with viability in and of itself, our medical technologies, that changes everything. So, precedence isn't an end-all, be-all. They're good reference points, but it's not end-all, be-all. Let's keep that in mind. So again, Kavanaugh is still arguing returning the federal courts, returning to neutrality and leaving it to the people.
I assume you agree with most, if not all, the cases I listed there where the court overruled precedent. So the question on stare decisis is why, if, and I know you disagree with what I'm about to say in the if we think that the prior precedents are seriously wrong, if that, why then doesn't the history of this court's practice with respect to those cases tell us that the right answer is actually to return to the position of neutrality and not stick with those precedents in the same way that all those other cases didn't?
Because the view that a previous precedent is wrong, Your Honor, has never been enough for this court to overrule, and it certainly shouldn't be enough here when there's 50 years of precedent. Instead, the court has required something else, a special justification, and the state doesn't come forward with any special justification. It makes the same exact arguments the court already considered and rejected in its stare decisis analysis in Casey, and in fact, there is nothing different. There is no less need today than 30 years ago or 50 years ago for women to be able to make this fundamental decision for themselves.
What she just said was imperative. She said there's no less need today than there was 50 years ago, 100 years ago, and back to the beginning of time. She may have well said it. May as well have said it. There is no less need today than there was throughout the totality of history to try and overrule God's design. A woman's body is designed a certain way, and it cannot be undone. God's design cannot be undone. There is a fundamental, foundational process that was created, breathed into us. It's not going to change. And fighting for the right to be able to choose to get rid of your child is not ever going to change that. It is what it is. It is what it is.
About their bodies, lives, and health.
Thank you.
Okay. So in the next section, they talk about viability again, because again, this is what the whole proceeding is about, viability and overturning precedent. You stink.
Is that the viability line is a principled and workable line. So to change it, there would have to be a new line that's obviously more principled and more workable. And the line that the court has drawn actually—
But that's stare decisis. I'm asking as a matter of first principles.
As a matter of first principle, the viability line makes sense because if the state constitution is the same—
As a matter of prudential judgment. It's not constitutionally required as a matter of first principles because, in fact, we could decide to be more protective and say 27 weeks into the second trimester.
You could, Your Honor, but the viability line makes sense given the protection for liberty because it comes from the woman's liberty interest in resisting state control of her body. And once the court recognizes that interest, it does need to draw a line, as it does in many other constitutional contexts like the Fourth and Fifth Amendment.
Okay, let me just make a clear and present point. There is no such thing. There's no such thing as state having control over a woman's body when it comes to this particular situation. There's no such thing. Now, what I have seen is the state taking control over children's bodies. For instance, I forget her name. She was actually a local individual. She had cancer, and her mom was treating her with natural treatments, and the state CPS sued her, took control of her daughter, and because the mom didn't want her to get chemotherapy and radiation because it was hurting her. She didn't have a good quality of life. The natural treatments were working. The state actually took over and forced the child, I think she was like 12 or 13 years old, forced the child to get the chemo and radiation treatments. What happened to having control of your own body then? How come that didn't matter? So again, this goes back to what I said in the very beginning of this show. This has nothing to do with having control over your body and everything to do with being mad at the Creator. And I do not care if they talk about philosophical arguments or not. These women are mad at how their body is created. That's really what they're mad about. That's why she uses statements like, if women are forced to endure months of pregnancy, if women are refused the right to terminate their pregnancy when they want. Yeah, anybody who's had pregnancy, been through a pregnancy, labor and delivery, we all know that there are effects that come along with that. With Rain, I couldn't even stand up to make a sandwich. I was so tired. My iron was so low. I couldn't even walk from my bedroom to the bathroom without being out of breath. And let me tell you, it's not far. We have no stairs. I was tired all of the time. And Quincy actually made a statement at one point. And he's like, well, is the baby getting what she needs? I'm like, yeah, that's the problem here. She's not deciphering that I'm in need. She's taking what she needs to grow, right? And so I'm being depleted. And I had to end up having iron infusions and all of this other stuff. Not all of this other stuff, but I had to end up having iron infusions multiple times to get boost my iron because I was just so depleted, right? Along with a few other things, vitamins and minerals. A woman's body doesn't necessarily look like it did pre-pregnancy. However, we have seen, that's why the whole mom bod, dad bod thing came into play, because body shaming is such a big deal these days. And but we do see women out there who have had 1, 2, 3, 10 children, and they've worked out and they've bounced back and they look great, and I'm like, wow, good job. Like, there are options. Options, we are not absent of options. That's just the thing. We are not absent of options. There are tons of options. There are multiple contraceptive options. There are, but abstinence is an option, but that's not preached, because we live in a society of instant gratification, satisfy me, do what I want, convenience. We live in a microwave society. So, waiting until you're married, waiting until you found the one that you actually want to parent with and have children with until death, that's no longer a thing anymore. People aren't interested in that. They want to sow their oats and test the waters and go fishing and, all of these terms for, I want to go out and be satisfied sexually with whoever I want, whenever I want, however many times I want. And if I get pregnant, I don't care. I want to get rid of it because that's not what I want, but I want to be satisfied right now. Like, this is the society we live in right now. And I'm not demeaning anybody who's been divorced or went out there and sowed your oats or whatever. Do what you want. But what I'm saying is, there are consequences to things. There are consequences, and there are results, right? So, like I said, pregnancy is a very specific process that happens very randomly. So you can go out there and sow your oats 20 times, and on time 21, well, baby time. Well, I didn't want that baby. Okay, well, you shouldn't have been doing it. Well, it didn't happen all these other 20 times. Well, that's not how this works. It's a very specific process that happens very randomly. So you need to know that. And why do you get to take out what you want? Your interests are the only things that are at heart on a child who has the interest to live. And it's just very interesting. So like I said, I think I've gone on a rabbit trail here, but what I'm saying is coming back to the fact that these people are mad about how they are created. They say that we were just randomly, boom, everything's in existence. That's a bold-faced lie. It doesn't even make sense. What they're mad at is the creator they don't want to believe in and how he created them, and that's what makes them mad. Okay. This has nothing to do with equality. She makes that argument that women will not have a full and equal part in society or under the Constitution either if they have to do this. This has nothing to do with equality, because if it had to do with equality, then we would be bringing men in to make decisions as well, because they are part of the process, a very specific part. And without them, there is no process. There is no part. Without them, all of this could be eliminated. We wouldn't even be talking about this, right? Okay. 118 and 23. 118 and 23. Revoking rights to participate fully and equally in society. This is when she says it. 18 and 23.
Recognized in Roe and reaffirmed in Casey, it would be an unprecedented contraction of individual rights and a stark departure from principles of stare decisis. The court has never revoked a right that is so fundamental to so many Americans and so central to their ability to participate fully and equally in society. The court should not overrule this central component of women's liberty.
General, would you specifically tell me, state what the right is?
Okay, so women are saying she's making the argument that women don't have rights, and so what Justice Thomas is asking is, tell me what the right is exactly. What is the right that we're dealing with here? And this is an interesting couple of minutes. It's about a minute and a half of interaction, but it's, why do they have such a hard time saying, I want the right to kill my baby on demand? Why is that so difficult? I'll tell you why it's so difficult. Let's listen to it.
Is it specifically abortion? Is it liberty? Is it autonomy? Is it privacy?
The right is grounded in the liberty component of the 14th Amendment, Justice Thomas, but I think that it promotes interests in autonomy, bodily integrity, liberty, and equality. And I do think that it is specifically the right to abortion here, the right of a woman to be able to control without the state forcing her to continue a pregnancy, whether to carry that baby to term.
I understand we're talking about abortion here, but what is confusing is that if we were talking about the Second Amendment, I know exactly what we're talking about. If we're talking about the Fourth Amendment, I know what we're talking about because it's written, it's there. What specifically is the right here that we're talking about?
Well, Justice Thomas, I think that the court in those other contexts with respect to those other amendments has had to articulate what the text means and the bounds of the constitutional guarantees. And it's done so through a variety of different tests that implement First Amendment rights, Second Amendment rights, Fourth Amendment rights. So I don't think that there is anything unprecedented or anomalous about the right that the court articulated in Roe and Casey and the way that it implemented that right by defining the scope of the liberty interest by reference to viability and providing that that is the moment when the balance of interest tips and when the state can act to prohibit a woman from getting an abortion based on its interest in protecting the fetal life at that point.
So the right specifically is abortion?
It's the right of a woman prior to viability to control whether to continue with a pregnancy, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, why it took her so long to get to the point is beyond me, but I'll tell you why. Well, it's not beyond me. I'll tell you why it took her so long to get to the point. The reason why it took her so long to get to the point. Okay. Good thing we have two. The reason why it took her so long to get to the point because there's nothing like having your shame living and breathing, walking around on the earth. For those who, and I talked about this a little bit yesterday. Having an abortion is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, but it is a permanent solution. It's gone, right? And although there are lasting effects, for instance, I went down a very dark spiral into attempted suicide and such after I had an abortion I did not want. I didn't know what I was doing. The guy left me at the abortion clinic. I was all by myself. I wrote a whole thing about it. I wrote my whole story out. There are lasting effects mentally in your psyche that last, but when you have the child and you give them up for adoption, it's a whole nother thing, right? So that living, breathing decision is walking around threatening to disrupt your life at any given moment, right? You never know. You never know what could happen. They could come back. They could come back. They could want you in their life. They could, it's that shame, because abortion and adoption both can come with shame. It's not just one or the other. Both of them can come with shame. And this is why I was saying most women don't want to give men the option to raise the child, because then what does that say about them, right? And I'm not saying that this says anything about them. What I'm saying, because I think it would be very honorable for a woman to say, hey, we got pregnant. I don't want to do this, but they give the man the option. I think that's very honorable. And it's a decision that I think should be made more often. But in their mind, what would that say about them? What are all the things, horrible things that they could think about? I gave my baby up. I didn't want to raise them. I didn't want to do these things. I'm a horrible mother, yada, yada, yada. Women who have abortions think that they're no longer mothers. The problem is they are still mothers. They're just mothers to children who aren't living, right? A woman who has a miscarriage at any stage typically believes that they're still a mother. They're just a mother of children who are in heaven. That's usually what I hear. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because when I had a miscarriage, I was much younger than I am now. And maybe that has changed. Maybe I'm not understanding that. But I know that the friends that I know who have had miscarriages, they count those babies. Those babies are part of their lives, right? So how is an abortion any different? If a mother loses their baby at 22 weeks, but she wanted the baby, it makes her a mother. But if she aborts the baby at 2 weeks and she didn't want the baby, it doesn't make her a mother. So, there's all these types of arguments that are out there. But the thing about it is, when you have the baby but you don't raise them, there's this idea that you're now a horrible person or a bad mother, which that's not really the case. I think it's a very honorable decision to choose to give a baby up for adoption. But that's just me. Okay. So again, we see in her argument that these women desperately want control over the design. And they're trying desperately to get that through worldly legal systems. Okay. In an hour and 32, it's about done. An hour and 32, we see Justice Sotomayor, Sonia Sotomayor, brings forth an argument for the need to keep viability at 24 weeks. However, we will hear that this is largely based on circumstantial issues. We're not going to hear anything else. I've said this a dozen times, if not 100 times, if not more. These are all circumstantial issues, and circumstances change rapidly sometimes. I mean, what did we see last year with the big C coming over the whole entire globe? It was such a fluid situation. Every day there was something new. Every day there was new developments. Our lives were changing literally day by day, right? circumstances change. So we're going to hear all of these circumstances, and it's ridiculous.
Life changes for women after 15 weeks.
That's exactly right, Justice Sotomayor, and I think that this is responsive as well to the questions that the Chief Justice was asking about, in particular, the impact of enforcing a 15-week bar in this case. The court has always looked at that issue by looking at the people for whom the law is a restriction, not those for whom it's irrelevant. So the question is, why would women need access to abortion after 15 weeks, and what is the effect on them? And there are any number of women who cannot get an abortion earlier. They don't realize that they're pregnant. That's especially true of women who are young or don't haven't experienced a pregnancy before, or their life circumstances change, as you referred to, Justice Sotomayor. They lose their job, or their relationship breaks apart, or they have medical complications. Or for many women, they don't have the resources to pay for it earlier. It takes time for them to raise the money or make the appropriate logistical arrangements to be able to take time off work and travel and have childcare. And for all those women in this category who need access to abortion after 15 weeks, the fact that other women were able to exercise their constitutional rights does nothing to diminish the impact on their liberty interests in forcing them to continue with that pregnancy.
Okay, you know what I just heard? I just heard opportunities for mass education and opportunities for creating jobs. That's what I just heard. That's what I just heard her say. They are so focused on what these women can't do. And ask Quincy. I harp on this. Oh my gosh. I am, what do I choose to give my baby to play with? Guns. Nerf guns. That's what's laying around. Anyways, these people are so focused on what women can't do. The fact that they can't choose to get rid of the pregnancy when and where they want, however they want, when they want. They're so focused on that they're completely missing the bigger picture. I just heard her say, we need more daycares created. More sound, solid, honest, clean daycares out there. Lots of them. So if women want to work, they have options so that they don't feel like they need to get rid of the pregnancy because they want to pursue a career. Mind you, I'm coming from a place where I believe in a biblical design for traditional family unit with a man and a woman and children, and the mom stays home if she can, to raise the children up. This is the position I'm coming from. However, not everybody's life is going to look like that. So there's what I believe, and then there's what happens a lot of times out there, right? Daycares, if we had more of them so women felt like they could. So why don't we find solutions to their fears instead of just getting rid of what they see as the source of the fear, right? Why don't we come up with solutions to the fear? Now, the ultimate solution, let me just reiterate that. The ultimate solution is the Lord. Love casts out all fear. And by love, I mean God. Okay? So it can't just be this worldly love that's all weird and warped and crazy. It's got to be the love of Christ that comes in and completely transforms your life and your mind. That is the kind of love that casts out all fear. However, we can create jobs surrounding this, right? We can create homeschool pods. We can create daycare centers. We can create, and I think, there's options for jobs, is what I'm saying. There's options for creating more orphanages. Why did orphanages go out of the picture? Why don't we have more of those here on American soil? So many people want to have babies and they can't, and they're having to go to other countries to adopt because it's so darn expensive. Why is it so expensive to adopt a child, to take a child into your home and to take care of them for the rest of their lives? Well, until they're adults, right? To raise them up. Why is it so darn expensive to do that here in the on American soil? This is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There are tons of people out there who either can't have children or want to adopt children. They make the process so ridiculous. I don't know if you've ever noticed, but when you go to the store, you've got, we'll just say you got less white products. Coke. Talking about Coca-Cola, folks. I call it less white because, you know, that's what they're training people to do. Be less white. You got a bunch of Coca-Cola products. And you've got the can of Coca-Cola. It's like 12, 16 ounces. You've got the 20-ounce bottle. You've got the 1 liter. And then you've got the 2 liter. And I don't know if you've ever noticed, but a lot of times, the 2 liter is on sale. Buy 2 for $1.50. And the 20-ounce is $1.89. Just for the one. Just for the one. Why do you think that the smaller soda is literally more expensive than 2 of the bigger sodas? Because the 2 bigger sodas will keep you sick. And if you stay sick, then you will stay going to the hospital. You will stay needing health care. You will stay needing them. You will stay needing to pour out more money, right? This is ridiculous that they would make adoption when this is one of the biggest arguments from pro-choice people. Well, you only care up until the baby is born. Well, no, that's not true. A lot of people care after the baby is born. A lot of people want to adopt. A lot of people are met with ridiculous restrictions. I have friends who tried to adopt children. The state said no because they didn't agree with their beliefs, which, by the way, were Christian beliefs. That they weren't allowed to foster children because of their beliefs. Dude, the state is saying no because you don't agree with their beliefs. This is the same as the whole Coke product thing. They're keeping children without parents. They're keeping children parentless because they're making it too expensive and they're making the hoops that people have to jump through to get these children unattainable. So the state is keeping this whole situation sick. If people weren't having abortions, we could focus more on the smaller percentage, the very small percentage, the less than 1 or 2% of people who are dealing with rape and incest. We could hone in and focus on that. Focus not on the fact that there was a baby created, but focus on the jerk who raped and the jerks who are being incestful. It's all about changing our focus. But we are so focused on what these women can't do, and it's only one thing. And it is really hard for them to say. They do all this talking roundabout, when really all it comes down to is, I hate that my body is designed this way and that I can't control it. And so, since I can't control the way it's designed, I'm going to control whether or not this baby lives or dies. That's as far as their control can go. And so that's what this whole thing is about. And it is so sad. It's so defeating to think that there are women out there who are arguing this point. And this is what they want for their lives. This is the evil that is pride. If we haven't seen enough pride waving around, this is another level of pride. This is just another level of pride. Pride is dangerous and it is destructive. And it doesn't matter who is waving it around. Okay. So, I did a lot of talking there. I am so sorry. So we heard, okay. So at 1:39, we're nearly done, guys. Nearly done. I don't even know how long I've been on here. I'm sorry. At 1:39, we hear Justice Kavanaugh again questions, leaving it to the people of the state. But again, that this general knows that the people are against abortion. right? So she talks about forcing them to continue to use their bodies to sustain a pregnancy and then bring a child into the world. Again, this is not a legal matter. It's a creator matter, but we're going to listen to it. 139 and 15. Because I want you guys to hear the arguments that they bring up.
The other side says, though, that there are two interests at stake, that there's also the interest in fetal life at stake as well. And in your brief, you say that the existing framework accommodates, that's your word, both the interest of the pregnant woman and the interest of the fetus. And the problem, I think the other side would say, and the reason this issue is hard, is that you can't accommodate both interests. You have to pick. That's the fundamental problem. And one interest has to prevail over the other at any given point in time. And that's why this is so challenging, I think. And the question then becomes, what does the Constitution say about that? And I just want to get your reaction to what the other side's theme is, and I've mentioned it in my prior questions. When you have those two interests at stake, and both are important, as you acknowledge, why not? Why should this court be the arbiter rather than Congress, the state legislatures, state Supreme Courts, the people being able to resolve this? And there'll be different answers in Mississippi and New York, different answers in Alabama than California, because there are two different interests at stake, and the people in those states might value those interests somewhat differently. Why is that not the right answer?
Justice Kavanaugh, it's not the right answer because the court correctly recognized that this is a fundamental right of women, and the nature of fundamental rights is that it's not left up to state legislatures to decide whether to honor them or not. And it's true, different rules would prevail throughout the country if this court were to overrule Roe and Casey, but what that would mean is that women in those states who are refusing to honor their rights and who are forcing them to continue to use their bodies to sustain a pregnancy and then to bring a child into the world will have no recourse other than to travel if they're able to afford it, or to attempt abortion outside the confines of the medical system, or to have a child, even though that was not the best choice for them and their family.
Thank you.
Justice Barrett?
I have a follow-up to.
So again, Justice Amy Coney Barrett questions the right to terminate the pregnancy versus terminating parental rights. So this is the abortion versus adoption argument here, which this is such a shame. Okay, we'll listen to this.
To Justice Kagan's question about reliance, I'm just trying to nail down, and I asked Ms. Rickleman this question too, but I'm not sure that I fully understand the government's position or Ms. Rickleman's position. So on pages 18 and 19 of your brief, you talk about reliance interests, and you quote some of the language from Casey about a woman's ability to participate in the social and economic life of the nation. And I mentioned the safe haven laws to Ms. Rickleman, and it seems to me I fully understand the reliance interests. They're the airy ones Justice Kagan was referring to, and then they're the more specific ones about a woman's access to abortion as a backup form of birth control in the event that contraception fails, so that she need not bear the burdens of pregnancy. But what do you have to say to petitioner's argument that those reliance interests do not include the reliance interests of parenting and bringing a child into the world when maybe that's not the best thing for her family or her career?
I think the state is wrong about that, and I think where the analysis goes wrong in reliance on those safe haven laws is overlooking the consequences of forcing a woman upon her the choice of having to decide whether to give a child up for adoption. That itself is its own monumental decision for her. And so I think that there's nothing new about the safe haven laws, or at least nothing new about the availability of adoption as an alternative. Roe and Casey already took account of that fact, and I think that there are certainly, of course, all of the bodily integrity interests that we've referred to, but also the autonomy interests retain in force as well.
Okay, so it's the reliance interests in the right to be able to choose to terminate the pregnancy rather than having to terminate the parental rights?
I think that that is part of it, yes. And I think for many women, that is an incredibly difficult choice, but it's one that this court for 50 years has recognized must be left up to them based on their beliefs and their conscience and their determination about what is best for the course of their lives.
Thank you, General.
Thank you.
You guys, that was the most ridiculous argument from this woman that I have heard. So she admitted that making a decision for adoption is that is a hard decision as well. That is not a decision that comes easy. I don't know if people have really put thought into that, but to choose adoption is also a very deeply hard decision for a woman to make. But what this woman is arguing is that while making a decision for adoption is hard, when it comes to making a decision to adopt or kill, we need to have the option to kill. Instead of making the options, because as we've said multiple times now, we are not without options here. We have lots of options. There's lots of options leading up to whether or not you even get pregnant, whether even part of the very specific process that gets you pregnant. There are a lot of options to not engage in the activity, to use the contraceptions that are available. There are IUDs, there are tied tubes, there are vasectomies, and I think guys should join in that. I don't think that's a wrong thought to have guys out there getting vasectomies. I think that's a great idea as well. In fact, vasectomies are actually easier. It's more easy. My words. It's easier to reverse a vasectomy than it is to reverse tubes being tied. And you can't reverse hysterectomy. So I actually am on board for that. A lot of guys have a lot of pride and they don't want to, do all that. And I think that maybe they should step it down a notch because there's some pride there. But also, there's condoms, there's double condoms, there's, kind of planning, because there's people who actually plan their pregnancies. They could actually plan not to as well. So there's that option. If you're able to track your ovulation, you can track when everything else is going on, when there's not ovulation, right? So there's options. There's definitely options. We're not without options. But it all comes down to, again, we keep coming back to the same thing. Well, I understand there's all those options, but I want the option to be able to get rid of it altogether. If that option's not on the table, then I can't fully and equally participate in society. That is literally what is going on here. That is what this woman has said during these oral arguments. If women don't have the option among the many to terminate pregnancy, then they cannot fully operate and participate in society. That has got to be the most bizarre thing ever. It's really tough to listen to these oral arguments. It's informative, and I enjoy listening to the Supreme Court justices ask the questions, give their arguments. It sounds that they would. It sounds like Brett Kavanaugh making the argument to return to neutrality. It sounds that they don't want to overstep the boundaries. Justice Amy Coney Barrett actually brought up the fact that they had vaccines were another case where bodily autonomy was an issue, was something that needed to be dealt with. So it's interesting that when it comes to vaccines, bodily autonomy, well, no big deal. But when it comes to the interest of an unborn child, women's rights. It all comes down. It all comes down to the fact that these women hate the way that their bodies were designed, and they seek desperately to control to the furthest point that they are able. And unfortunately, they are unable to control further than to keep the baby or to not. That's as far as their control goes. Because the design isn't going to change. It's not going to change. It's set. It's set from the beginning of time. The specific process that happens very randomly. And you can't control further beyond that. So unfortunately, this is where we're at. So it looks like I got a baby's getting into the garbage and all that good stuff. So anyways, that is my take on what happened today in the Supreme Court. We got to see BCP out there on the outside, and I was really glad to see there were a lot more pro-life people out there than there were pro-choice people out there. And let's not forget, I'm pro-choice too. There are lots of choices out there, and I just don't think one of the choices should be the option to get rid of a child. And it does come with a lot of regret, and the Lord has healed my heart, and the situation that I went through with having abortion myself. But at the end of the day, although I thank the Lord for forgiveness, what I really want is the child. That's what I really want. Unfortunately, that's not ever something that I'm going to be able to get back. So although my interest at the time was rooted in absolute fear and a lot of circumstantial issues, as we heard during these oral arguments, everything changed. And then it was too late because it was a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And that's something that I have to live with for the rest of my life, like many other women. And I just want to throw out there that if you have had an abortion, seek the Lord for forgiveness. Regret is a normal state of being for someone who has received forgiveness. Shame is not. There is no shame in the love of the Lord. And although we don't deserve to be forgiven, we don't deserve the love, He gives it to us anyway. When we seek Him, when we cry out to Him, and when we repent and understand that what we did was desperately against Him, He is open and willing to transform your life, transform your mind, bestow on you the gift of salvation. And you don't have to live in shame and guilt. Regret, yeah, you can. I regret it every day. But shame and guilt, you do not have to walk around with. The Lord will take it if you call on Him. Today is the day of salvation. Today is the day to choose Jesus. So any woman or man, because there's many men out there who have had women have abortions, and they didn't want those abortions. They wanted the child as well. I pray for your hearts, and I pray that the Lord would lead you into freedom. So thank you so much for watching today. And I got a copyright strike, so I'm not really sure. I mean, this was a Supreme Court audio. So I will be back on Monday morning. I'll be back on Friday. I'm sorry I was late this morning. I kind of explained that a little bit. It was just me and the baby. I have more freedom with 6 kids than many women with 1 child does because, having those extra arms is always a helpful way of doing life. When it's just me and her, it's just me and her. So I didn't go on this morning, but it was kind of worked out well. We got to see BCP down there on the ground. All the street preachers out there with all the banners. It was just great. I loved seeing that. And so I'll be back on Friday morning, 8:30. And then on Monday morning, we will, hopefully the court comes back in. They said they adjourned until Monday morning. So we'll be back on Monday morning to listen to it live. Okay, so thank you so much. Hopefully you will like and subscribe if you think I've earned that on the FranklyJamee the FranklyJamee YouTube page. And I will see you guys later. What's going on, huh? Yeah, she's ready. I'm ready for a nap. Bye, guys.